What's up, everyone? I'm Ethan, and I'm here with my boy Garrett.
What's going on?
And welcome to Hive Sports, where we talk all things NFL and college football. Today, we're going to be going over our top 30 fantasy running backs tiers list for redraft going into the 2025 season.
We will be focusing on half PPR formats. So that's pretty standard out there. And it is going to be tiers. So I think that tiers are much more useful than just rankings in a vacuum for drafting because you can really see where are the talent drops, where are the gaps, where do I want to make sure I get, Ash and Genty before the tier drop, for example. So this is going to help you guys draft I think a lot better than rankings are going to. And we will rank within tiers, so we're gonna show you guys how the tiers stack up. But keep in mind these guys are very, very close and interchangeable as a whole.
Totally, and I think you hit it right on there. We like tiers because as you're drafting, we think these tier levels allow you to be like, okay, I can take a risk. I can reach for this person because he's within the same tier as these other guys, or I can wait a little bit because although I want, my number 25 running back, I think the number 27 running back is also just within that same tier and I can get him next round, right? So I think it
Exactly.
allows you to kind of compare the tiers with the ADP and allow you to kind of really game plan your draft.
And if everyone within a given tier at the running back position is still available, that can kind of give you the signal of, hey, I can draft a receiver with this pick, and then I'm guaranteed to get one of these other guys with my next pick, for example. So you can kind of, there's a lot of gameplay, a lot of strategy that goes into it. And if you want to think about it from a game theory perspective, I think tiers are a great place to start.
100%. All right, let's get started with our G tier. We're going from 30 up to our A tier with number one. And starting with our G tier, number 30, we got Cam Scattaboo, 29, DeAndre Swift, and 28, we have Isaiah Pacheco, rounding up our G tier list.
Yep.
So,
So
obviously, Cam Scattaboo's a rookie going into a situation with the Giants where we're not entirely sure what's going to happen, but we're both fans of his, coming out of college. We think he brings that kind of hammer mentality when it comes to running the ball that I think the Giants could use and could be a good complement to Tyron Tracy. I think also then he's going to get a lot of those goal line carries because he is that type of physical back. But let's not forget that he was a great pass catcher in college.
yeah, that's one stat that I love dropping is he became the first player since Christian McCaffrey to have 1,500 plus rushing yards and over 500 receiving yards in the same season. So I think he doesn't quite get enough love for that, for those receiving chops that he has. You saw that against Texas, one of the best defenses in the country. So I think it's definitely a legit skill set of his, and he has that physicality and that red zone ability as well to go along with it. So I do think Scottaboo has a chance to take over the lead role from Tracy eventually. Probably won't start out as the workhorse, obviously, in the beginning of the season, but there is some upside there for him to finish as a high end flex play for your fantasy team this year.
100%. And I think DeAndre Swift is a guy that is going into a pretty good situation with the Bears, right? They're upgrading their offense. Ben Johnson has been hyping him up a little bit, and he has the talent to be enough of kind of that fringe, solid RB2 that I think could help a team win.
Yeah. Everyone wants to hate on Swift, right? Because I think Ben Johnson he was on the coaching staff when they got rid of Swift and they upgraded to Jameer Gibbs. So everyone's like, oh, he hates Swift, so we gotta go with Roshan or whatever else is in that backfield. But there really isn't a lot in that backfield, right, Ethan, besides
No,
Swift?
no, and I think the fact that DeAndre Swift and Ben Johnson have at least enough of a connection where Ben Johnson knows what he has, and I think he is okay with DeAndre Swift, which is why he didn't upgrade in this draft. And we were high on this running back class coming into the draft. So the fact that Ben Johnson didn't add to the running back depth, I think shows that he thinks DeAndre Swift is enough for this team to take the next step.
Bingo. Yeah, and Roshan, he hasn't really been able to step in as a starter and with the opportunity he's gotten. And then Kyle Monunga is a seventh round rookie. So even if he outperforms expectations, Swift should be the guy there. And we expect it to be a better offense as a whole. So I like Swift as like a round 9, round 10, you need some running back depth. You could do worse. But Isaiah Pacheco is looking like he's going to be the starter for the Chiefs heading into day one.
Yeah, and he's a guy that if it wasn't for his, recent injuries, I was high on, and I thought he was going to, kind of be a star in the league. He was an aggressive runner, kind of came out of nowhere for the Chiefs and really planted himself as being the guy. And then last season was a little unique with him coming back from injury. They were using why am I blanking on his name? Who was the running back for the Chiefs that they were using a lot?
Kareem Hunt.
Kareem Hunt. There you go.
Yeah,
They were using Kareem Hunt a
they were
lot
using
more than
them.
Pacheco. But I think now there's a little bit less competition in the backfield. I think Pacheco should be taking over that lead role.
Yeah, I think he's kind of getting double punished because obviously the injuries hurt a lot of people who were high on him last year, and I think Pacheco, he was a darling last year for a lot of redraft analysts. There was a lot of people I remember being high on him in that Chiefs offense, so could be a little bit of a post-hype sleeper there. Everyone wants to hate on him. Might be the correct time to buy him and to take a chance on him. So
Yeah.
that rounds out our G tier. I think we can move on to our F tier, which is going to be Caleb Johnson at 27, Brian Robinson at 26, and Aaron Jones at 25.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can. There's an argument that Caleb Johnson is really good value at this spot. I mean, the fact that they upgraded their quarterback with Aaron Rodgers, which I know last season wasn't great for him and the Jets, but I think there's an upgrade on the guys that they had. And you know that the Steelers, their identity is to run the ball, and that's what Caleb Johnson did at Iowa. Like, he was the workhorse. It's so funny. The Iowa mentality and the colors too is the exact same mentality that the Steelers are, and he thrived, in Iowa. So I think Caleb Johnson's going to go in. I mean, I know there's competition with Warren, and I think there's the pass catching upside is not necessarily there. But he's a big, strong back, and the Steelers love a big, 6 foot, 6'1" back who is 220 pounds plus that can run with, has those gazelle strides and can, bounce off guys. And so I think he's a guy that's going to get some good workload early on.
Yeah, and he's a guy, he reminds me of another big patient runner that they used to have out there in Pittsburgh, and that's Le'Veon Bell. And Le'Veon Bell wasn't a refined superstar coming out of college. He kind of developed and really came into his own in the league. And I think that's something that Caleb could do as well. He was right outside our top 5 running backs pre-draft in this draft class. And I think that the landing spot is just such a good fit, because they use that gap scheme kind of like Iowa, the gap blocking scheme. It's perfect for Caleb. He's patient. He has underrated athleticism for his size. I know he didn't test the best at the combine, but he's been clocked multiple times last year at over 22 miles per hour. And if you can hit over 22 miles per hour at 220 plus pounds, you're a hell of an athlete. I don't care what the 40-yard dash numbers say.
Totally.
So I think he could come in there and definitely outperform expectations. Like you said, run heavy offense. So I like taking shots on Caleb over Jalen Warren. I don't think that Jalen Warren's the kind of back to take over, a larger role than he had last year. I think that Caleb's the guy to own, especially in half PPR formats.
100%. Going up to Brian Robinson too. I was a little surprised the Commanders didn't invest, more into their backfield.
Yeah.
But it sounds like they're happy with him being the primary guy. He's going to be the lead back there, with an offense that we think is going to have a little bit more firepower too. I mean, I think there's definitely some upside there with Brian Robinson, especially at this value. I mean, what you're going to get from him, but as your team, your offense progresses, like a running back is more valuable, as your team gets you more goal line carries, gets you more red zone touches. So I think he's some decent value at that point.
Agreed. And then rounding it out is Aaron Jones at 25. And although he's getting up there in age now, he's going to be entering his age 31 season this year. He's been so steady throughout his career. Everyone loves to write him off every year, and he's a running back 2 or better almost every year. So I think that barring injury, I think that's the main concern at this advanced of an age. I'm not worried about whether the talent is there. And I do think that Jordan Mason's going to step in and have a significant workload for the Vikings. And you got to just hope that that is enough to keep Aaron Jones fresh It's enough to keep him involved in the passing game for that PPR utility. So I think that Aaron Jones is a decent value. I am a little concerned about the health, but what do you think, Ethan?
Yeah, I think you hit all those points. I think
Okay.
bringing in Jordan Mason, they obviously want to utilize him, but Aaron Jones has always had somebody, he's always had kind of a complement. He's always had a 1B or a strong 2 behind him that could kind of help him if he's injured or can minimize his workload if he's getting a lot of touches and he still produces, well in fantasy. So I definitely think that's
Yeah.
a good value here. Going into our E tier, we have RJ Harvey at 24, Quinshon Judkins at 23, David Montgomery at 22, and James Conner at 21. Gary, want to start us off here?
Yeah, let's start out with RJ Harvey. He's a guy who you loved, I think. I got to give you credit real quick because you loved him pre-draft before he got that second round draft capital, before he got the landing spot that everyone loves in the Sean Payton offense where every running back that has a pulse and can breathe gets over 50 receptions, it seems like, right? That's a hell of an offense as a fantasy football running back to land in.
Yeah, and I think, RJ Harvey, similar to how Caleb Johnson was, kind of the Iowa offense, RJ Harvey for UCF, he was the guy, he caught passes in the backfield, he was running the ball. He's a little bit older, so he's a little bit more experienced too and has, kind of been used to that workload. I also just think, like you said, you hit it right on with Sean Payton. He knows how to use running backs to the best of their ability. Even if you're not the biggest running back, you're not the fastest. Like he knows how to use your talents. And the fact that they also signed J.K. Dobbins as kind of a compliment to R.J. Harvey, so he doesn't have all the pressure as a rookie running back too. I think there's a lot of potential that he does well in this offense, especially with such a strong defense complementing them. Right, the fact that you have a strong defense complement means the offense is probably going to get the ball a lot, and I think that's really valuable for a fantasy, potential for a running back is like volume and how many touches you're going to get, and the better your defense is, the better the chances are you're going to get more touches on offense.
Yeah, that positive game script is real. I think that they have a good chance to be playing from ahead quite a bit, and they're going to run the ball plenty. And I think the good thing about guys that can catch the ball really well, like RJ Harvey, is they're kind of game script immune, right? So even if they're playing from behind, he's still a guy who's going to catch a ton of passes and probably do well for your fantasy team. So that's a nice thing to have. Moving on to 23, Quinshon Judkins. We do want to preface this by saying there has been the domestic violence news that dropped, but we didn't want to overreact and change our ranking of him a ton just based on the news. As we know, the NFL doesn't always punish domestic violence like it should, and they usually do let the legal process play out before they suspend anyone. So we're gonna keep him here for now, but there's a potential for him to be moving a little bit.
Yeah, and I think just distractions also can have a negative effect on production. So these are definitely subject to change, and I think Quinshon Judkins, maybe in the future, depending on how we hear how the news is going, could drop down a little bit. But the talent speaks for himself. He was productive at both schools he was at in college. He has the build and the look of a workhorse NFL running back. And with Nick Chubb being gone, I think the Browns they drafted him to be the guy. I know they drafted
Dylan
Sampson also as kind of a later round draft pick who I liked a lot at Tennessee. But I think Quinshon Judkins is going to be coming in as the workhorse. He's going to be and you don't know what the Browns are going to do with their quarterback situation. They have 5 quarterbacks that they're, have no idea what they're going to do with. And so if your identity, you're not sure at what it's going to be like as a quarterback, but you have a running back that can be a workhorse guy, then I think he's in a shoe-in for some volume.
Agreed. Yeah, I think the other question mark in Cleveland is just like the touchdown equity, right? We don't know how many points this offense is going to score, but if Judkins does miss some games, let's say he gets suspended, I think Dylan Sampson is just kind of like he's a 1-for-1 replacement for Quinshon Judkins in that he had over 1,500 rushing yards last year in the SEC. He showed that he can be a guy who carries a full workload. So if you do get Quinshon Judkins, I love handcuffing him with Dylan Sampson, just to make yourself breathe a little bit easier at night, right? So that's a good pairing to have. 22 is David Montgomery. Seems like he's perpetually underrated. It's just such a consistent back for the Lions.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could lump in James, our next two, James Conner
Yeah,
and David Montgomery
yeah.
together here. I mean, every single season, they're guys that are underrated. Every single season. I mean, James Conner last year averaged almost 16 fantasy points a game, right? RB 15, and he's still 21 on our list, and like he's just been an efficient guy. As he's gotten older, he, can catch passes. He gets those extra yards. I mean, he's not on a great team either. The Cardinals' offense is still figuring out their identity, but he has been the consistent piece. And then David
Yeah.
Montgomery, I mean, I know everybody's like, oh, Jahmyr Gibbs, but like he's produced. I mean, they've been able to give both of them significant touches, and they've both been significant in fantasy the past 2 seasons.
It's such a good offensive line there in Detroit. So I think that, the little thunder and lightning approach has played out very well for fantasy managers. And I mean, Frank Ragnow did retire, but it's still a very, very good offensive line. Monty was right behind James Conner in fantasy points per game last year, RB16 as opposed to RB15 with James Conner. So these are both, I think, really solid running back twos that you can get for your team later in the draft, and they could pay dividends, especially if they stay healthy. I think that's really the only concern I have with both of those guys. But I think we can move on to our D tier, right, Ethan?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's
So
go on.
Yep, number 20 is going to be Travion Henderson, 19 Chuba Hubbard, 18 Kyron Williams, and 17 is going to be Amarian Hampton. Want to kick us off
So
there?
yeah, let's start out with Travion Henderson. He's definitely a my guy for us. We love the talent. He's just an explosive running back. A guy you want to get out into space, and he can take one touch all the way to the end zone, any play. Very, very electric player. He's a weapon in the passing game. He can pass block very well in the backfield. He's just an all-around weapon in the backfield. And I really like what the Patriots did as a whole, but Travion should be a big piece of their backfield.
Yeah, 100%. And then number 19, Chuba Hubbard. He's another guy that I think goes underrated the past couple seasons. Panthers, they drafted Jonathan Brooks a couple years ago, and they thought that was going to be the guy to take over the backfield, and Chuba still stayed on top. I know there was injuries with Jonathan Brooks there, but he's a guy that also offensively the Panthers added additional weapons, and I think the Panthers are trending in the right direction to where he can be very significant in fantasy, like he's been in the past couple years. So he's a guy that I think is underrated even at the 19 spot. But yeah.
I totally agree. Yeah, he's going to get the volume there in Carolina. They did add Rico Dowdle. They drafted Trevor Etienne, but I just see Chuba being a guy who gets easily 70+% of the running back touches out there with the Jonathan Brooks injury. I think Chuba's a great safe play at 19. And then 18, we got Kyron Williams, which is going to be a hot take for us. Maybe it's going to trigger some people out there who like Kyron. But I think the most common, retort that I've gotten from having Kyron Williams a little bit lower is, hey, you guys say this every year. Fantasy analysts say this every year. Kyron Williams, fade him. Don't draft him. What happens? He's a top 10 running back. He's an elite, volume running back who's carrying your fantasy team. And I don't know, man. I just think that that's going to change this year. There's been some Sean McVay interviews where he's talking about how he likes how other coaches are using multiple running backs. And he's always been a one running back guy, but I think he's seeing, hey, there might be some value to using multiple backs. And they drafted Blake Corum last year. They drafted Jarquez Hunter this year with 4th round capital. So they clearly have a plan to use more than one back. And Kyron Williams was not very efficient last year, was he, Ethan?
No, he wasn't very efficient. He kind of lacked that big play ability, right? Garrett, didn't you have a stat that you really like on that big play ability?
Yeah. So the breakaway run rate stat on PFF just tracks how many plays a running back runs for over 15 yards. So that's a breakaway run. And out of a lot of carries, right? He got a ton of volume last year. He only had a handful. I believe it was 9% breakaway run rate, which was bottom 3 amongst all starters in the NFL at running back. So that's never a stat that you want to see for a guy. And I think it's a clear indicator the Rams are giving him too much volume because he's not able to maintain the efficiency.
Yeah, and I think the fact that they reached, and Jarquez Hunter is a guy that was my guy. You know, we were high on him going into the draft, but fourth round draft capital is significant for a guy like Jarquez Hunter, and his 4.4 speed, his pass catching ability. I mean, it shows that the Rams want to utilize him in the pass game, and so I think also, you know, Kyren, in my opinion, is probably going to be primarily a rusher, like he's going to run the ball for the Rams. But I think a lot of those kind of pass downs, those 2-minute drills, are going to be more Jarquez Hunter. And the fact that this offense really has upgraded their passing game quite significantly with, you know, Devontae Adams, with Terrence Ferguson, Jarquez Hunter. I mean, I could see the Rams' identity really being this gunslinger this next season. And I think that leans more towards a running back by committee than let's just hand the ball off to Kyren, you know, 20 plus times a game and just let him get 3 yards a carry, you know, marching down the field, right?
Yeah, totally agree. And rounding it out is Omarion Hampton. So he's a guy who's going to be a rookie. He's going to have quite a bit of upside, right? And I think that's one thing we can touch on is within these tiers, there's safety plays and there's upside plays. So just kind of depending on your build, if you already have a solid veteran running back or two and you need some upside, this might be where you say, hey, I'm going to take Omarion Hampton or Travion Henderson instead of Kyren or Chuba. I want to shoot for upside. But if you don't have a safe running back veteran already, you need an RB1, maybe you go Kyren Williams or Chuba for the safety. So that's kind of decisions, micro decisions within tiers that you can make. But Omarion Hampton set up very well. Najee, you know, the eye injury with the fireworks and all that. We don't know if he's going to be ready for training camp now. So there's some uncertainty there. Extra reps for Omarion Hampton in training camp though, which should be helpful. And it's a run heavy offense, right? Greg Roman, you got Harbaugh. It's going to be a lot of volume there for the running backs in Los Angeles.
Yeah, I mean, I think the upside now with Omarion Hampton is much higher than even a couple weeks ago, right? Or before the July 4th of July incident, which I know as a Giants fan, your experience with your firework injuries. But the fact that, like, a lot of people were a little skeptical with Omarion Hampton because they thought early on in the season, Najee Harris was going to be the guy to take the workload. And then Omarion was probably going to, you know, there was going to be passing of the baton. Omarion Hampton, you know, dynasty-wise is going to be extremely valuable. But, you know, year one, people were a little skeptical. Najee, who knows with his eye injury, right? Like, you don't know, and eye injuries can be really significant. In fact, it could be career-ending. Not saying that's going to be the case, but, like, it just can really change the outcome of how things move going into the season. And if Omarion Hampton's getting more touches and he's getting more exposure and he's getting more experience with Justin Herbert, I think that is just, there's a chance that Omarion Hampton could be a top 10 running back fantasy this next season with the talent that he has and the opportunity in this Chargers offense with this run-heavy offense, a team that is trying to make that next step to be a playoff contender. I mean, I think there's extreme upside at even the 17 spot with Omarion Hampton.
Agreed. Yeah, and I think that if we had more concrete news about Najee, he's definitely going to miss time, then I think we'd push Hampton even higher up this list. But just for now, it seems like Najee is probably going to be ready for the start of the season, so that will probably eat into Hampton's workload just enough to keep him in this running back 2 range in our D tier.
Totally. All right, let's move to our C tier. We got James Cook at 16, Joe Mixon at 15, Alvin Kamara at 14, and then Kenneth Walker rounding us up at 13.
Yep. So you want to start us out with James Cook?
Yeah, I mean, James Cook is a guy that I feel like we're repeating ourselves, but he's a guy that I think is a little underrated. I mean, he's not the flashiest running back, but when you're on a team with the Bills that year after year just seems to perform well with Josh Allen without much talent around him, I think there's a little bit of that handcuff when it comes to his touchdowns on the short yardage because you have obviously Josh Allen who is getting, double-digit touchdowns as a quarterback, which is crazy. But I think you've noticed, I mean, we talked about Kyron Williams. The volume or the opportunities is what makes a fantasy running back valuable at times. And right now, James Cook is the guy. Like, he's the guy there. He was more efficient last season than his previous years, and he's starting to kind of catch his stride as a true RB1 for the Bills. And I think he's a guy that could be a fringe, solid RB1 for teams this year.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that's kind of dragging down his ADP is the contract, right? There's that
Yeah.
contract dispute, and I think he's considering holding in. They do that because they don't want to get fined, obviously, but that's somewhat of a concern. I do think that they re-sign him before the season starts because they got Ray Davis behind him, Ty Johnson, but that would be a pretty big downgrade from James Cook. And the other concern is touchdown regression, right? You touched a little bit on how Josh Allen is a big touchdown vulture there for the Bills, and I think James Cook had around 18 touchdowns last year. He had quite a few touchdowns last year, and that's probably going to regress this year. But he still should be a guy who gets over 10 touchdowns. Even if that number does regress from where it was at last year, he's still a solid running back too, with some nice upside and some passing game utility as well.
100%.
But yeah, moving on to Joe Mixon, we got him at number 15. He was actually spotted in a walking boot this offseason, so that's something to monitor. There is not reports that it's going to be something significant that hinders Mixon heading into the season. So that's why we still have him at 15, but that is something to monitor as we head into the start of the season.
Yeah, and I mean, he was a guy that had over 1,000 yards rushing. He's Mr. Consistent. Average over 4 yards a carry. I think he's a guy that, if the Texans are going to want to take that next step this next season, they're going to have to rely on him too. I know CJ Stroud takes a lot, puts a lot on his shoulders, but, you're only as good as your run game a lot of the times. And so if Joe Mixon can keep moving, the offensive line, can improve on last season, I think Joe Mixon has a good opportunity to make an impact in fantasy for sure.
Yeah, and he was RB9 last year, and he has a washed Nick Chubb and a scat back rookie Jaquavius Marks behind him. So there's not a lot of competition for touches, and Mixon should be the clear workhorse again next year. Just like Alvin Kamara was last year. I think that both of those guys should probably have similar volume this year as they did last year. I mean, the Saints did not really do much to take away touches from Kamara.
Yeah, I mean, average 19 fantasy points a game. He's just a guy that, 50 plus receptions the last few seasons, even with, I don't even know who their quarterback was most of the season last
Spencer
season.
Rattler, hodgepodge of guys.
Yeah, Hayner was out there. I think Kamara's a guy that everybody sleeps on every redraft, and every year he's a guy that he's consistent. He can plug him in as a solid RB2, maybe even a fringe RB1 at times, and can just say, he's going to get his touches. He's not going to get 20 carries a game necessarily, but he'll get 10 carries a game. He'll have 5-6 catches for 50 plus yards, maybe a touchdown, and it's like, boom, wow, there's 20 points right there. He's just Mr. Consistency. That he's going to be, especially in the Saints offense, I will say that their weapons are minimal now. And it's you're going to rely on Alvin Kamara in the running game and the passing game. And so I think that's important when you're talking about, half PPR where, those touchdowns are important and those catches are important and the yards are important. Half PPR is one of those things where you kind of need it, you can't just rely on pass catching like you maybe could in full PPR. You can't just rely on your rushing attack like you could in standard. You kind of need a mix of both. And I think Alvin Kamara is that perfect combination of both, receiving and rushing weapons.
That's a great point. He did average, I think he's had over 57 or more receptions the last 3 seasons. So he's a consistent PPR producer, like you mentioned. He did miss the fantasy playoffs last year with injury, which absolutely killed us in our high stakes redraft. So that was heartbreaking because he was number 6 of all running backs in fantasy points per game. But yeah, he's entering his age 30 season next year. The injuries are a concern. If we knew he was going to be healthy, I think we'd probably have him even higher than this. So 100%. Some definite value there. Kenneth Walker is going to be our last player in the C tier at number 13. And I think he's a guy who's kind of getting overhated a little bit. He's getting slept on. And last year, what I really liked about his game is he took a big leap forward in the receiving category with 4.8 targets per game. That was a lot higher than previous seasons where he had already established himself as a very good running back, just kind of as a pure rusher. But then he's now showing that he can take on that workload in the receiving game too. So I think that's going to elevate him into this C tier.
Yeah, I think what could be creating some hesitation for some folks is, the Seahawks identity, what it's going to look like. JSN is now going to be the guy. He's going to be the dude. You have Sam Darnold coming in as the quarterback. There's definitely an identity shift that might change with Cooper Kupp coming in, and are they going to be more of this, 10 to 15 yard, pass catching type offense where you're kind of hitting those short routes and you're trying to make chunk plays and stuff like that. So definitely excited to see what they're going to do. But Kenneth Walker has been consistent the past couple of years. He's the guy. I mean, Charbonnet has been a good, handcuff guy there in Seattle, but he spot starts when Kenneth Walker's been hurt. He's, doesn't really take over much of Kenneth Walker's fantasy upside.
Yeah, I think the main concern is just health with Kenneth Walker at this point. But I think if he stays healthy, he can really have a true breakout season that we haven't really seen from him yet. But moving into the B tier, we will have three in this tier. We got Breece Hall at number 12, Bucky Irving at number 11, and Chase Brown at number 10.
Definitely, and I think Brees at 12 as a guy that drafted Brees Hall 5th overall last season. The talent is there, and he has the skill set to be an every down back, and I think it's going to be tough going into the season to know exactly what Aaron Glenn is going to do with this running back situation. He's gone on the record to say that he's happy with like a three-headed monster at running back, which obviously Brees Hall fans aren't. That kind of minimizes his fantasy relevance at times, but also Brees Hall is emphasizing that he's going to work as hard as he can. He's going to prove that he's going to be the guy. And sometimes coaches just say stuff on the record to kind of kick guys in the butt, and then they're the dudes, And so I could see Aaron Glenn being like, yeah, we're gonna have I like all three running backs. We're gonna have a committee, and then you see the start of the season, and Brees Hall's the only guy touching the ball just because he's that talented.
Yeah, new coaching staff. He's going to have to reprove himself. But I think the fact that he's willing to do that and his ego's not too big to where, screw this coaching staff, I should be the guy. Like, why are they disrespecting me? He's kind of come out there and said, yeah, it's a new coaching staff. I gotta prove myself all over again. And if he's too good to take off the field, I don't think they're going to be rotating Isaiah Davis and Braylon Allen in just for the hell of it. So if if Brees can reestablish himself, I think that he's a great value here because, like you said, he was number 5 overall in redraft last year, not RB5. He was 5 overall, yes. And now he's sitting at RB12, RB10 to 12 range. So there's a lot of potential value there, and I think he also claimed in that same interview that there was an injury that heavily limited him down the stretch in 2024. He's now healthy. He's now hungry. So I think we see the old Brees Hall return next year.
Definitely. And then we got 11. We got Bucky Irving. G, you want to talk about Bucky?
Yeah, Bucky, I think there's not a ton to say on Bucky. We saw him defy expectations last year. We saw him be an elite passing game weapon. I remember on PFF, he had a 90 PFF receiving grade, which was one of the highest in the NFL as a rookie. So he's a very, very good pass catcher, and he's an underrated ball carrier as well in between the tackles.
100%. Moving to number 10, Chase Brown, too. A guy that became a lot more fantasy relevant last season. Was a guy that really was helping win leagues last season. I mean, we had him in a couple leagues that definitely helped bolster us. And towards the latter half of the season too, when he was starting to get more consistent, higher percentage of snap shares, you really started to see him take off and being fantasy relevant. I mean, he finished top 12 6 times in the last 11 games, and then of the remaining few games, he was RB2 in majority of them too. So, or you know, top 24. So like he was fantasy relevant for all the games that he was getting more than a 50% snap share. And I think going into this next season, you for sure is going to hit that 50% threshold.
Absolutely. There was also some concern that from Chase Brown dynasty owners at least that the Bengals might add a running back in the draft, and they did add Taj Brooks pretty late, but he's not a guy who I'm worried about taking volume away from Chase Brown. So he should really step in there as like the almost every down back, and he's a great receiving role as well with Joe Burrow. So he's a guy who can be an RB1 pretty easily next year.
100%. All right, let's move to our A tier. We have two more tiers. For A tier, we have number 9, Josh Jacobs, number 8, Devon Achane, number 7, Jonathan Taylor, and number 6, Christian McCaffrey.
All right, let's start out with Josh Jacobs. He's really established himself as the unquestioned workhorse for the Packers. He ranked top 5 in rushing and receiving PFF grades last year, which is very hard to do. And I think that, you can't really exaggerate just how good he was in both roles last year for the Packers. He really carried that offense at times.
100%. With the amount of injuries that they had in offense last season, he was kind of that shining light. And if the Packers want to make that next step this next season, I mean, he's gonna be the guy that's gonna lead them to that next the next step. The passing game is going to be able to be a lot more successful because of how efficient and how strong of a running back Josh Jacobs was last season.
Yeah, I like Josh Jacobs as a solid back-end RB1. Devon Achane is another guy with a lot of upside. He had 78 receptions last year. So I'm a little worried about that number going down just because of how high it was. But at the same time, I've actually heard reasonable arguments that number could stay the same or go up because of the fact that they shipped off Johnny Smith to the Steelers. And running back and tight end targets are pretty correlated. So there's going to be just as many targets available for Devon Achane again next year.
Yeah, and I think if Tua comes back, reasonably healthy compared to last season with the quarterback situation they had, I think that's going to obviously benefit Devon Achane as that Miami team, improves. And, we don't know what the Tyreek situation either. So, I mean, right now, Devon Achane is the explosive star they have. I mean, They even lost Raheem Mostert as kind of that backup running back to potentially get those touchdown snipes. And Johnny Smith being gone, who knows what Tyreek. I mean, right now it seems like it's going to be Jalen Waddle, Devon Achane, and Tua, running this offense.
Yeah, I expect the offense to be better too. So there should be more scoring opportunities, and I think if the receiving role shrinks a little bit, I think that the added touchdown opportunities and the improved offensive line play will even that out a little bit. But 100%. Moving on to Jonathan Taylor, we have him at number 7. What are your thoughts on JT this year?
A lot of people are worried with the, kind of minimal pass catching that he has. But, I mean, Derrick Henry's made himself fantasy relevant year after year for that same, run first, pass 10th,
Yeah.
Pass catching 10th, like JT, he had 1,400 yards in 14 games last year. This Colts team, if they want to do anything next season, they're going to have to rely on him heavily. He's just a guy that I think people forget how big of a prospect he was coming into the draft out of Wisconsin and how talented he is. And people are kind of sleeping on the fact that he has produced still. I mean, when he's there and healthy and he's playing every down, he produces well. I mean, 1,400 yards in 14 games is crazy, right? And so I think if the Colts get any better and they figure out their quarterback situation and they, tune up some of their offensive holes, there's a chance that, they make a slight improvement on the offense that Jonathan Taylor makes it even a bigger step.
Yeah, I think the offense runs through him at the end of the day, and I don't think they're going to be leaning on AR and Daniel Jones to win them a lot of games. So JT's a guy you can really depend on and have PPR this year, I think. And Christian McCaffrey, the last player in this A tier, was one who I was like, if I could guarantee his health, I think he'd be in our top tier, right, Ethan?
Oh, 100%. I mean, here's the thing. Sometimes in fantasy, you have to take a risk. And if Christian McCaffrey drops to you as, end of second round or mid second round. Like Christian McCaffrey has the talent where if he's healthy on the field, he's going to win you your leagues. Obviously, the injuries are a concern, and if you're not willing to take that risk, and some years, I know sometimes when I'm drafting, some years it's like, well, looks like I'm taking the risky team, and sometimes it pays off, and sometimes it doesn't. And some years I'm like, I'll just take the consistency, the guy that I know is going to be reliable, and sometimes that pays off, and sometimes it doesn't. And so Christian McCaffrey's a guy that I think if he's healthy and he's able to get a significant share of the snaps, the 49ers are losing a lot of weapons right now, and they have a lot of guys that aren't healthy. And if they want to have any chance of winning the division, which right now people think that they do, Chris McCaffrey has to be healthy.
Even if all those injuries have kind of, taken away a little bit of that high-end athleticism, even like 80 to 90% of his former self, that's still an easy top 10 running back. Because you look at 2022 to 2023, he averaged over 22 fantasy points per game. He was an all-time fantasy running back. Yep. And even if he's not 100% of what he used to be, he's still great. So that's kind of the bet that you're making. The Niners offense is going to have to run through him, especially early in the season. They have him and Kittle and then a bunch of maybes behind him. So yeah. So I think Christian McCaffrey could definitely, when it's all said and done, finish as a top 5, 6 guy next year.
100%. All right, let's move up to our S tier, our final tier. Number 5, we have the rookie Ashton Genty. Number 4, Derrick Henry. 3, Jahmyr Gibbs. 2, Bijan Robinson. And number 1, Saquon Barkley.
Yep, and I think ADP-wise, it's a little surprising, but based on the underdog best ball drafts that I've done so far, we're actually higher than consensus on Henry by more than we are on Genty. Genty is actually going right in this range, so we're not even really higher than consensus on Genty. But Derrick Henry is going more in that end of the A tier, middle of the A tier, ADP wise. So we are significantly higher than consensus on Derrick Henry.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to Derrick Henry. I think first with Ashton Genty, and we'll be quick with this. He's a guy that's going to be involved in the Raiders situation, that they're going to want to run the ball heavily. I mean, Pete Carroll has that run-first mindset. Bringing in Geno Smith, you have Brock Bowers, plus you have some Jacoby Myers. Like, you have some pass-catching weapons around, so it's not going to be just a one-dimensional running attack only. But Ashton Genty came in to be the guy. I mean, he was drafted at, 7th overall, 5th, something, top 10 draft capital to come in and be the workhorse that he was at Boise State. A guy that has a lot of talent. We compared him to Maurice Jones-Drew, my guy who I got, jerseys of. So I think he's a guy that even as a, RB5, he's going to be of extreme value. And I'm excited to see what he does this next season.
Oh yeah, it's a really nice top tier of running backs this year, and I think Genty, he slots right into the Gibbs, Bijan type profile, and there's just not a lot in that backfield. Like, I think you mentioned Raheem Mostert is there. Other than that, man, it's not a lot, and they drafted him as early as they did, top 6 in the NFL draft for a reason. They're going to use him right away, so I like that. Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley were the top 2 running backs last year in terms of rushes of 10 yards or more. So Barkley had 46 on 345 attempts, and Henry had 45 on 325 attempps. So those guys are just like, a large percentage of their plays are going for over 10 yards, man. And, they're so hard to stop.
Like, listen, we've talked about guys that are underappreciated every year. I mean, Derrick Henry, 7 of the last 8 seasons has been over 1,000 yards rushing. And the one season in 2021 that he didn't, he ran for 937 yards in 8 games.
Yeah.
He ran for 1,900 yards, almost 6 yards a carry last season with 16 touchdowns. And a lot of people thought, in his first season in Baltimore, Lamar was going to take all the rushing touchdowns. Lamar was going to, no. I mean, he's a guy that is built to produce and is built to kind of carry that workload. And here's the thing. It's not like Baltimore added a ton of offensive weapons that are going to get rid of these touches, right? Like, the offense is going to be ran through Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, and then they're going to dump it to Zay Flowers, maybe Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely. Hopefully, D Hop will get rid of those yips that he had in the Super Bowl. But I
Yeah.
mean, Derrick Henry's a guy that he's going to get those touches, and if it wasn't for a guy like Saquon last season who had a spectacular season, a record-breaking season, Derrick Henry had almost 2,000 yards rushing, which last season was 1,920, and that wasn't even his best career
Yeah.
rushing yards.
It's insane.
We're forgetting that this guy has been consistent. He's had one season of injuries his whole career, and even then he still produced when he played. And people
Yeah.
are just like, oh yeah, he's not that relevant fantasy-wise, and he's not like he is. And he's, to me, and I know we're a little higher on him than consensus, but I'll take him as my RB4 any day.
Oh yeah, especially in a half PPR. I think there's an argument in full PPR that he belongs in the next tier down. But in half PPR formats where you're not getting as many points for receptions, it's so hard to not draft Henry, right? I mean, when you look at touchdown equity, all the things that matter in half PPR, he's just elite. But moving on to Jahmyr Gibbs, that same stat, right? I mentioned Barkley had 46 on 345 over 10 yards. Henry 45 on 325. Jahmyr Gibbs ran for more than 10 yards 41 times on 100 less carries than Saquon Barkley. So he had 5 less carries of 10 yards or more on over 100 attempts less. So Jahmyr Gibbs is just he's so explosive, man. He's such a talent, such a good passing game weapon. And him, Bijan, and Barkley, I think that you'd be hard pressed to find a better top 5 pick than those guys.
Yeah, I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs is the guy that it's crazy that he's getting 41 rushes of 10 or more on 250 attempts. He's the most explosive, you could say the most explosive running back in the league. I mean, he's a guy that if it wasn't for David Montgomery also producing super well, if he was in a situation like Derrick Henry or Saquon or even Bijan, he would easily be, in my opinion, the RB1 with his, pass catching ability and his running abilities. So my only fear is, obviously with the new offense coordinator coming in, you still have Dave Montgomery producing well. It's just, even though he's producing in significant fantasy, it's still hard to feed two mouths. But give him to me all day.
Yeah, and it's hard to find holes in any of these guys, right? These profiles, Bijan, Saquon, establish themselves as the focal points of their offense. I think Bijan even has a little more room for growth at this point, heading into year 2 of Michael Penix. But both of these guys, man, I think Saquon, I'm a little worried because he had 345, carries last year, and he had even more overall touches. So when you have over 400 touches in a season, that's going to be a little bit of an injury concern the next year. But Saquon takes care of his body very well, and I think he got rid of all those injuries when he was on my Giants. Now that he's on the Eagles, I think he's like, okay, I'm going to stay healthy now. So
100%. And I don't think there's much more to add to those guys. I mean, I think this S tier, you'll be happy with any of these 5 guys. Obviously, there's chances for regression for Saquon and Derrick Henry. And to me, Bijan has a chance of making that next step. I mean, he's increased his workload over the past, 2 seasons he's been in the league. So lots of excitement for this tier for sure.
I think any of the guys in this tier, just to finish it off, are these are all guys you can use as a hero running back strategy, where you draft one running back very early and then you don't touch running back again until round 10 or later. So you can draft any of these guys, and I think that any of them are very good bets to give you consistent PPR RB1 production, and you can kind of do a little bit of a mix and match of late round running backs to pair with them.
100%. Well, if you like this video, please give us a like, subscribe, comment down below if you disagree with any of these. We like to, have the discourse with other people and hear other people's thoughts. So feel free to chime in and let us know if you disagree or agree with some of our takes. But we'll see you next time. We'll have some more redraft content coming soon, and we appreciate you getting to the end of the video.